Catholic Moments Podcast, Episode 155, Fatherless, with Brian J. Gail.
Catholic Moments is sponsored by CatholicMatch.com, the leading Catholic singles community. Being single can be a challenge. Catholic Match helps make it a little easier. To get started today, visit CatholicMatch.com/Lisa.
Blooming, finding joy in the journey and hope in the heaven yet to come. Blooming.
Hello and welcome to Catholic Moments. And now, here's your host and my mom, Lisa Hendy.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Catholic Moments, the show from CatholicMom.com, where we talk about all things faith, family, and fun from a Catholic perspective. I am so happy to be with you this week. It's a good cheering up week for me to be here on the podcast. I have to say that we just came this morning from dropping our announcer, Eric, off at the airport. He headed out to college this morning, and Greg and I had a wonderful evening with him last night in San Francisco, and then put him on a plane at 6 o'clock this morning to Boston for college. And I'm not going to kid you, I'm a little emotional today, so I'm so happy to be with you and to introduce you to our guest for today, Brian J. Gail, a tremendous author, a fabulous speaker, and somebody who I know is going to greatly inspire you to the message that he has to share with us today. And before we jump into that interview, I thought I'd set a little bit of a precedent for that with a tremendous message that we have related to the topic of fathers in our lives. And we'll hear now from everyone's favorite online deacon, Deacon Tom Fox, with this week's Deacon Moment. Here's Deacon Tom.
Dear friends, in my ministry, I've come to discover that there are men and women who have a father wound in their heart. Something or some things have happened with these people that have kept them from seeing, glimpsing God the Father's love. From time to time, when I think of my own upbringing, I believe I've carried a bit of this father wound as well. And this may be why I have such instantaneous love when I see small children. I want to hug them, play games with them, be with them. I see their tender innocence, and it even becomes unpleasant for me to leave them. One of the writers and people that I've really come to look to is a fellow named Chris Stefanik. He's with the Archdiocese of Denver, and he has a family and youth ministry outreach. Some time ago, he said that he got a glimpse of the love of God the Father when he lost his 3-year-old son for about 20 minutes. Chris and his wife and family were packing up after a weekend camping trip, and the young son saw other adults walking away, and he thought it was his parents. So the child left Chris and his wife and went after the other adults. Chris's entire family and camp staff immediately started a frantic search, with tears running down their faces. Chris said a prayer welled up in him, "Lord, you've given me so many blessings. Take them all back. Just give me back my son." And in that moment, he saw how willing he was to forfeit even his life for just one of his children. Chris wrote that the love in himself was an instinct etched into the souls of all fathers from the foundation of the world. It isn't warm and fuzzy stuff. It's the voice of God the Father imprinted in our souls, telling us, "I love you. I want you to be with me." This is the love that Jesus brought into Holy Thursday and Good Friday, and that love also brings us to Easter. Each Sunday Mass is another celebration and participation in all those Holy Week events. And if you listen to the prayers of the Mass, they're almost all directed to the Father. If you struggle with a father wound, ask Jesus and ask Mary to enter that wound and fill it with the balm, the salve of God's love and mercy. This is Deacon Tom. Blessings.
Thank you so much, Deacon Tom, for that beautiful message. It's very timely, I think, with the conversation that we're going to have in a few moments with our guest today, Brian J. Gail. And I just want to point everyone over to Deacon Tom's wonderful website at www.deacontomonline.com. And if you're like me and just this simple little deacon moment here at Catholic Moments isn't enough for you, you can also subscribe to Deacon Tom's wonderful podcast with his lovely wife Dee at www.catholicvitamins.com. Thanks, Deacon Tom. See you next week. Our guest on today's episode of Catholic Moments is an author of one of my favorite new books, Fatherless. Brian J. Gail is a husband, a father of 7, a grandfather of 5, a former Madison Avenue CEO, and a Fortune 500 consultant. It was after an early retirement that Brian felt an inner calling to write, and it was his yes to God which led to what will be known as the American Tragedy and Trilogy. Fatherless, the first novel in this trilogy, has recently been placed on the Catholic bestsellers list, and we're so happy to welcome today the author of this wonderful book, Fatherless, Brian J. Gail. Hello, Brian. Thank you for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me, Lisa.
Well, it's a real treat, and as I just told you, I just spent most of my weekend with you reading Fatherless, and as so many of the other reviewers who have read it have said, I absolutely could not put the book down. But before we talk about the book, I'd like to just learn a little bit more about yourself and your family.
Well, I think you pretty much covered the broad strokes. I was in the advertising business for a number of years, and my wife and I have been no stranger to suffering, and if there is any value for any souls in fatherless or motherless, which is coming, or childless, God willing, which I'm about to start, third in the trilogy, it will be a fruit of the great suffering that my wife has endured, and the family really is a consequence of some of the things that have happened. So the work is united to the cross. It's ground very much in the personal suffering and been offered up, in a form of reparation by a wonderful woman who is my wife.
Well, what a testament, and I know that so many of the wives out there probably hope that their husbands will someday say something so gracious about them. You know, this book, Fatherless, I know it is the first of 3 books that you've conceptualized, and the second already having been finished, Motherless, but let's focus on Fatherless today, and I have to tell you that I love our faith so much, and I love books like this that have the ability to teach so much of the truths of our Catholic doctrine without really kind of forcing it down your throat. Tell us how you conceived of Fatherless and how you describe the book to somebody maybe who hasn't read it yet.
Well, I think catechetical tool is something that seems to be surfacing as a label for it. To be sure, I didn't set out to do that. I had retired at 58. God had blessed us richly in our business and career and so forth, and I had time on my hands, and I was very discouraged that my own children were going through pre-Cana conferences, and they were not told the truths about the sacred transmission of human life at these conferences, pre-Cana programs, and so I sat down to really write more than anything else, a memoir that I hoped would get into that subject a little bit. But it was so god-awful after about 2 weeks of work, I stepped back and looked at it and realized even I could tell it was bad, and I shut it down. And then I walked away from it, and my wife encouraged me to try again, and I did, and out came a story about a Catholic priest. And nothing could have surprised me more. And from there, really, I was just holding on for dear life. The story just kind of took off. Yes, there are some biographical details that are more true than fiction in certain of the characters' lives, obviously. But a great deal of it, most of it, is obviously fictionalized. But I simply wanted to show real live families, Catholic families, grappling with the reconciliation of the American dream and the church's ever fainter call to holiness. When I was growing up, that call was pretty clear. It was a clarion trumpet call. Not so in our children's generation. A lot of that has to do with the culture itself, but some of it has to do with the weakened condition of our beloved Holy Mother Church. I didn't want to catechize necessarily, obviously, but at the same time, I wanted to show families grappling with these great moral issues. In Fatherless, it's the pill and cable pornography and the effects of both and how they're linked together. In Motherless, it's in vitro fertilization and embryonic stem cell testing and commercialization. And in Childless, it will be nanotechnology and something foreboding called transhumans. Believe it or not, the work has already begun, and there's even a transhuman society. And what that means is that they regard our current species as version 1.0, and they're at work on 2.0, which they think will be a prelude for something more advanced. But suffice it to say, the species that they intend to create will be part human, part computer, and part alpha animal species. So all of that, it seemed to me, was a piece, a mosaic. And I thought it started with the pill and its stimuli, which was the cable pornography that made its way into the sanctuary, into the living room in the 70s and 80s.
Brian, this point that you're making right now is really encapsulated in a conversation that happens between two priests in the book. It's really kind of was a focal point of the book for me, where Father Sweeney is sitting down with his pastor, and Father Sweeney being the sort of the main priest, and they have this conversation that kind of reiterates a little bit of what you just said. It was really an eye-opening thing for me because I lived through that time, but I wasn't an adult at that time, so I think much of it went over my head, and to hear it expressed in that conversation between an older priest and a younger priest who's really trying to seek out where we got lost along the way, and you capture the priests' voices and their perspectives so beautifully. How were you able to do that? It's like you were channeling an inner priest within yourself.
Well, I really don't. Thank you for that. I don't know. I can only tell you that, as we said before we went on air, I entrust everything to the Immaculate, and she is the spouse of the Holy Spirit. And, I try to get the dialogue is I came out of the advertising business, so obviously I have, I've developed some ear for the spoken word, let's call it. And, you try to just put the two perspectives together. The young priest who wonders why, the church didn't stand up behind Humanae Vitae, and the older priest saying, oh, we did. One of our own, bishop, the Archbishop Boyle down in Washington, D.C., actually suspended about 21 or 22, I think it was, signatories of that dissenting ad in the New York Times published the day after the release of Humanae Vitae, July 25, 1968. And the young priest is astonished because he doesn't know this. And he said, well, what happened? And he said, well, he was forced to reinstate them. And the young priest can't believe that Rome would, at the time, have made such a beautiful statement on the transmission of human life, which is really an affirmation of Costa Connubii, which was published under another pope some years before, and yet not allow one of its bishops, to support it in a strong way. But nonetheless, that's what happened. And as the young priest learns, none of the bishops after that wanted to be O'Boiled. O'Boiled became kind of like Bork, Bork, a verb. And they decided, well, we're not going to get to the right of Rome if Rome isn't going to defend Humanae Vitae from dissenters who are confusing and scattering the faithful. Well, then we're not. And as a result, all hell broke loose, so to speak, and Holy Mother Church has never been the same. So that's really where it began. It began with, the apple of the technology revolution, the third of man's great revolutions. Father Brian talks about this, the first being industrial, the second being sexual, and the third being technological.
Mm-hmm.
And to be sure, the technology of the pill allowed the cultural revolution, the sexual revolution, to really take off on its own trajectory. And really, the world has not been the same since, as we know. The Austrian inventor of the pill, Carl Djerassi, said in the summer of 2008, it's been a nightmare. It's a demographic horror. He meant, of course, that the West is not replacing itself as a consequence of the pill. And he didn't say this, but obviously the Islamic world, John Paul II said this, is reinvading, if you will, the West in a manner unprecedented. And it doesn't need to fire an IED, set off an IED to do it, really.
You know, you have the ability with these characters in the book to show some very real-world struggles that families go through, and again, there's a relationship between these families and the priest in their life that they can go to, and not always under the seal of sacrament. And he actually mentions that quite frequently they come outside of confession to him, but the priest grows as well in the book. And I guess if you were to look at a couple of the characters in the book and to say, the struggles that most closely relate to your own life, I could see just from reading your biography elements of you in some of them. Are these kind of people that you've come into interaction with in your parish or in business interactions and things?
Well, Lisa, I think the answer to that has to be yes. I mean, clearly, when I got into the middle of the second book, I really felt like I knew these characters, and
mm-hmm.
that came out very, very quickly in comparison. So I do have a sense that I know these people, and readers typically will tell me, characteristically will tell me that they know these people too. Obviously, Michael Burns, for those listening who have read it, is a Medicine Avenue executive, so there's portions of his life that are that I experienced. Maggie Keeley, my favorite character,
mm-hmm.
Is a wonderful lady who suffers greatly and has a bipolar daughter, and I won't say more than that.
Yes, don't spoil for anybody who hasn't read.
Clearly, we had that experience. My wife has suffered greatly physically, and we both have had many, many additional sufferings with a bipolar child. So there are pieces and parts of the stories and subplots that are true to life in some respect.
Brian, as you go out with the book and take it, and I know you're doing quite a lot of speaking, what types of reactions are you getting from people that have read the book?
I have to say that I've been shocked because when I tried to get it published, nobody wanted to read it, and those few that did didn't like it. So when we found, when one publisher agreed to publish it, we were shocked, and I had been prepared for the same kind of rejection from readers. But quite the opposite has happened. We've, as you mentioned, it's achieved bestseller status, which I think in the Catholic world is about 10,000 copies in about a year, and it's all word of mouth. Although we now have a distributor who's been getting it in Catholic bookstores. I think a couple hundred of the 1,800 that exist. So the distribution is very, very narrow, very thin, and yet through word of mouth, the book seems to be moving, and people who read it seem to like it and see the larger issue in play, which is, what has happened. The first volume, Fatherless, is really the keynote, so to speak. We're talking about the American tragedy and trilogy, the demonic attack on family and how it brought mankind's greatest empire down. I mean, really imploded it. And people seem to understand the larger issues in play in Fatherless, and they'll see them pick back up in Motherless, and again, God willing, in Childless. So To me, I've been just kind of overwhelmed, Lisa, with the reaction.
Well, you can definitely tell your humility about the whole thing is really shining through, and that you've really offered yourself as an instrument to God and to the families that'll be touched by this. I'd recommend to our readers that they pick up a copy of Fatherless by Brian J. Gail, but that you do it when you have a couple of days to spare, because I can tell you that you won't want to put it down, and then you'll be immediately anxious for Brian to release the next book as well. Brian J. Gail, our guest again today, can be reached through his website over at fatherlessbook.com, and we also want to point you to hliamerica.com for additional resources. And I do want to really just strongly recommend that you get a copy of this book. We need to support Catholic fiction like this. If we want more of it, we need to go out and buy it. And support the authors who are doing this. Brian, are there any closing thoughts that you'd like to share with our listening audience before we let you get back to your work?
Well, thank you, Lisa. First of all, thank you for a wonderful interview, and really, truly, having done your homework and just asking really terrific questions. Secondly, I'd like to mention that all the profits from the book go back into the mission. HLI America is a new mission, an extension of HLI. It was launched in honor of Father Marks, the iconic priest, and someday, soon, please God, a saint, who created HLI, and he was very much a man of the trench, and understood that the battle had formed around the pill and hormonal contraceptives, and there's no more important battle being fought in the Catholic Church today than the battle against what has been called this spiritual cancer, this black plague of abortifacient contraceptives, which take the lives of so many children without their mothers even knowing it. So I would just urge people to get the facts, which you can get from HLI America and their executive director, Jen Giroux, and Megan Harmon, her assistant, and do what you can to bring these to the attention of our children, because too many of our children are just wandering into the black abyss without even knowing the truth. And I think it's our generation's accountability to make sure that they do know the truth.
Well, Brian, thank you for doing your part in that in a way that, maybe equally as effective as attending classes or things like that. And I thank you for doing your homework and writing this book and all the hard research that went into this and your upcoming books as well. So again, our guest today has been Brian J. Gail. You can visit him at fatherlessbook.com, and please go out and get your copy of Fatherless today. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Lisa.
Well, thanks again to Brian J. Gail. You know, it was very coincidental that after we recorded that interview, Brian and I found ourselves sitting next to each other at lunch at the National Theology of the Body Congress, where he was moderating a panel just like I was. So it was really nice to be able to meet him in person after that conversation. And I just can't recommend this book highly enough. I hope you'll check it out. Fatherless. Be sure to visit our show notes for links to the book and to Brian's website. And thanks to the wonderful folks at Human Life America for facilitating this interview. And next up, let's hear from our good friend Lisa Mladnick with this week's Amazing Minute.
Hi, this is Lisa Mladnick from AmazingCatechist.com, and this is another Amazing Minute. Have you noticed that when a priest enters a classroom, children react in fascination and awe? A priest is a mysterious person to them, and otherwise rowdy children will suddenly fall silent, their eyes lit up with curiosity. It's important to note that with so few children ever taken to Sunday Mass, untold numbers of religious vocations are lost because children miss the opportunity to be inspired by these dedicated and holy men. If you're a parish catechist, meet with your DRE to discuss ways to coordinate visits with your pastor or one of his associates. They are very busy, but most priests love to be invited and enjoy visiting with the children. To be sure the visit goes well, prepare your students in advance. Practice having them stand and say, "Good afternoon, Father," when he enters. Write his name on the board so the children will remember it. Prepare something for them to share with him. They'll be so proud when his eyes light up. Marvel with them at the dedication and love that help a man to sacrifice everything to follow in the footsteps of Christ. Ask your priest to bless the children before he leaves and have them say, "Thank you, Father." Afterwards, have them write thank you notes so that Father will have something beautiful to remind him of his visit, and the children will learn to appreciate the gift of the priesthood. This has been another Amazing Minute from AmazingCatechist.com. Thank you, and God bless you.
Hello, my name's Elizabeth.
And my name's Sarah Reinhardt.
It's time for Mary Moment.
Last Sunday, we celebrated the Feast of the Assumption. Since I'm a self-proclaimed Mary geek, you might think that I know all about the Assumption. You might feel pretty confident that today's reflection is going to be all about it, in fact. You could, perhaps, even presume that I'll take some original stance on it and lead you into a deeper series of reflections. Well, I hope you're right about something in that list, but I gotta admit to you, the Assumption is one of those major Marian feasts that leaves me feeling a little, well, unsure. For one thing, there's the word, assumption. That makes me think of the word assume, and that makes me think of a saying my dad had about assuming. You probably know it, the one about what it turns you and me into. An assumption is a certainty we hold without having any proof whatsoever. It is, in fact, a concept that gets me into trouble all the time. I assume I know my husband's schedule. I assume I know what so-and-so is planning to do. I assume I have things all figured out. But the assumption, the one where Mary is taken into heaven in glory and honor, is nothing like this. It's not a theory. It's not even just an idea. You won't turn into a donkey by believing in it. Imagine, if you will, a conglomeration of all your favorite people. Picture them all in one place. There's probably going to be some food involved because you can't have a big group of people and not have food. You'll have a sense, as you're imagining this, of what it must be like in heaven. When Mary showed up in heaven, there was sure to be a party. In fact, that party is probably still going on. And hey, guess what? We're a part of it. God loved us so much, He gave us His Son. But He went one step further and gave us His mom, too. We not only have a Savior, we have a mama in heaven. Just last weekend, at the Catholic New Media celebration, I had a chance to hug quite a few of the girlfriends I've been dying to meet in person for quite some time. I imagine the Feast of the Assumption is the Church's way of helping us to anticipate heaven. It's going to be great. How do I know? Well, Mary's going to be there, of course. She already is. Until next week, my friends, may you find Mary in the midst of your everyday life, and may she lead you ever closer to heaven and to her Son.
Thanks to Lisa Mladnick over at AmazingCatechist.com and to, of course, our good friend Sarah Reinhardt, SnoringScholar.com for this week's Mary Moment. We love hearing from both of them. And I do want to share with you a special announcement from our good friend Father Robert Reed about Catholic TV. So hang on. Let's listen to that now.
CatholicTVEverywhere.com. Help us to bring a fresh, family-friendly, and faithful Catholic television network to every household in the entire country. Join with tens of thousands of others in showing your support. Just go and fill out the simple form at CatholicTVEverywhere.com and get all the people you know to do the same. I'm Father Reed, the president of the Catholic TV Network. Thanks for your help. CatholicTVEverywhere.com.
Thanks so much, Father Reed, for the announcement and also for the great work that you and your staff are doing. Please, everybody, go over and fill out this form. Tell your friends about it. We need Catholic TV everywhere. I'm telling you, we just need it everywhere. And now let's hear from everybody's favorite little Catholic teen, Avery, with a very inspirational message for us this week in this week's Teen Moment. Here's Avery.
Okay, so this week I was reading in my Bible about how great the gift of life is. And it got me meditating and just really thinking about how truly blessed I am to have every day that I have to live. But what that also got me thinking about was how many people in this world don't really have the opportunity to live. Every single day, 115,000 children's lives are taken from abortion. 42 million children are killed every single year from the horrible practice of abortion. There are 8.4 million people that live in New York City, and that's a pretty big city. If you've ever seen on the news in New Year's Eve and stuff, it's a really big city, and they can fit a lot of people in there. That's like 5 New York cities worth of children who are unwanted and killed every single year from abortion. And what's really sad about it is a lot of the women who have abortions are actually Christians. And it says in Wisdom 7:1, "In my mother's womb, I was molded into flesh." It tells us in Jeremiah 1:5, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you and I dedicated you." When they were talking about Jeremiah and him becoming a prophet, it says in Sirach 49:7, "Even in the womb, he had been made a prophet." God loves us and he knows us from the womb. He's created us. He has a plan for us. And when we take away that plan, we're destroying part of God's creation. It says in Job 10:8, "Your hands have formed me and they have fashioned me. Will you then turn and destroy me?" In Psalm 22:11, it says, "From my mother's womb, you are my God." God loves us. He has a plan for us. And every single day we have is an incredible gift of life from God. So this week, just make the most of every moment that God gives you and embrace your life, because he has an awesome plan for you that he has had since before you were even born. Stand up for our Catholic pro-life beliefs and share the beauty of life with those around you. So with something to think about this week, I'm Avery, and this was your Teen Moment.
Hey, Avery, thank you so much for another amazing teen moment. You're just so super to have on the show, and I want to point everybody to livewtl.com for Avery's weekly Live Out Loud podcast. She's a real star in my book. And it's about time now for us to close out this week's show. So I want to thank you for hanging in there and listening. Thank you for all your prayers for my family this week and all the warm wishes that have been sent my way. I can't wait to get back with you in 2 weeks. We won't have a show next week because I'll be in Boston setting up my son's college dorm room, but we will get back with you as soon as I get back the following week. So I hope that you have a fabulous week. And in the meantime, maybe you can be sending us some feedback. We'd love to hear from you. You can call our voice feedback line anytime at 206-339-9272. You can use that fancy little recorder device on your iPhone and just email it over to lisahendy@gmail.com, or record an MP3 file on your computer, or just simply come on over to Facebook and join our Facebook group at facebook.com/Catholic Moments. I'd love to be your friend on Facebook or on Twitter. My name again is Lisa Hendy, and I do want to thank our sponsors, CatholicMatch.com, the leading community for our Catholic singles online, for their warm and friendly sponsorship of this podcast. And we wish you and yours all the best. Until next week, everyone, have a great week. Bye-bye.
SQPN, leading the way in Catholic new media.